Eugenics is the foundation, and I was hoping to get an artist to do the opposite to show that the foundation for all of these, the basis was Darwinism. But you can see if you flip that around, the basis of psychology, biology, genetics, statistics, and so on is eugenics. And to figure out what race you were, we had to measure people with calipers. Had to be scientific, and they were very scientific, very, very scientific, very German, very meticulous, very, let's do everything according to law. And in the Holocaust against the Jews, they did everything very carefully according to law. And they were opposed to these pogroms on the streets, these demonstrations against Jews on the streets, because nope, we don't do things that way. We do it very orderly, very carefully. And so they were trying to determine whether or not this guy is a German enough. Eye color, they had these charts. They would check your eyes out to see whether or not you had enough blue. And I'm not sure where I would rate, but probably up here, so I guess I would pass that test. And there you can see these boys are being evaluated by the eye chart. And this is what I mentioned earlier. This man was the ideal German soldier, pictured on bulletin boards and posters throughout Germany as the ideal German soldier. And then they unfortunately discovered that he was Jewish. Embarrassing. And of course, to indicate you're Jewish, you had to wear a sign, which is interesting because, remember what I said? If you're an inferior race, you ought to be able to tell by looking at you, but you have to be labeled. And that's the ideal German. Very blonde, very light skin, very blue eyes. And anyone know something about dermatology? What would the dermatologists say? Which is told me, yeah, who is prone to skin cancer? That's right. If you got a little bit of a tan you're born with, my friends that are black, they say, I'm lucky. I don't have to go to the beach. I was born with a tan. And people who are dark-skinned have clear protection against skin cancer. Now, it's not zero likelihood. You still can get skin cancer, but these people here, they're very prone to skin cancer, especially basal cell carcinoma and, unfortunately, melanoma, which is often lethal. His anti-Jewish ideas. It was confident that the world would someday thank him for eliminating this rotten parasitic race, even if Germany lost the war. So towards the end of the war, he thought, well, we're losing the war, at least that's what we think he thought. He was trying to show the best face to the German nation, but there's good indication that he knew we were losing the war. And therefore, instead of using the trains to bring the soldiers to the front, they used the trains to bring the Jews to the concentration camps. And the Germans complained about this. They said, look, we need the trains to bring supplies, soldiers, food, etc., gasoline to the front. And you're diverting these to bringing the Jews to the concentration camps. And he thought that if we eliminate this bad race, this inferior race, the world will thank us. And so this is why they documented so carefully. And this is why we know how many Jews they killed, because we have their names and addresses. They have books. They have thousands and thousands of books which document every Jew that they killed, or just about every Jew. Towards the end of the war, it got messed up. But they indeed wanted to document this carefully so they could say, look what we did. We helped create a superior race by eliminating this rotten parasitic race, the Jews. Why did they think they were parasitic? What did they do for a living? Many were bankers. Why weren't the Germans bankers? They couldn't be because the Catholic Church would not allow them to charge interest. Usury, they called it. So the Jews could. So Jews became bankers because they could charge interest. Well, you're not going to survive in a bank if you don't charge interest. You're not going to exist. You have to charge interest. That's how you survive as a banker. And so the Jews were parasitic, he said, because all they do is take money in and give money out. Well, there's a clear need for that. And Hitler was very, by the way, anti-capitalist. He hated capitalism. But he realized you have to have some capitalism. So that's why he allowed the capitalists to survive if they cooperated with the Nazis. And that's why he was partially so against the Jews, because they were the capitalists. They were the extreme capitalists. And there you can see, that way you know they're Jews. They have the Star of David on them. And Adolf Hitler and the top Nazi leaders were clearly the products of German education, science, and the prevailing social worldview of the late 19th and early 20th century. When we look at what caused Germany to go so wrong, we look at the educational system, the schools, as it should be pretty clear. And we look at America, when we look at the fact that 38% now are creationists, we need to look at the schools. When we look at the drastic changes, some of you are still trying to get used to the transgenderism. That's the idea where males are born males and somehow think they're a girl. Or women are born women and somehow they come to think that they're men. You might wonder, you know, they're born to think they're women even though they're men. A few years ago, we'd say that's crazy. A psychiatrist friend of mine, he said, these people don't need a surgeon, they need a psychiatrist. Okay, and now more and more is coming out. There are more and more, there's a whole website of people. One, I'm trying to think, it was a man who became a woman and then realized that it didn't solve his problems. And he then made a mistake. And he's got a website with many people who basically tell their story. And if you gals especially think about this, I bet most of you gals were tomboys when you were young. How many were tomboy? Okay, I've got 1, 2, 4, 5. You're tomboys. Okay? Instead of looking at that as normal, and normal girls are tomboys, many are, okay? At least some tomboyishness is in most girls. Now what they do, and I got this from a person who brought her son to the pediatrician, and the doctor said, now have you ever thought maybe you're really a girl? Do you like to do girl things? I like to read. Well, that's an indication that you're a girl. Do you like sports? No, I hate sports. Maybe you need some therapy because maybe you're transgender and maybe you need surgery. The boy was 9 or 10, and the mother was livid in putting that idea in her son, who she had enough problems with already, but now thinking that he's going to think, well, gee, maybe I'm really a girl. And so this all comes out in the scientific literature. But it's politically correct now to be very supportive of transgender, and I'm not, you know, there are certain problems I'm not going to criticize, but I wonder if surgery is the solution to many of these cases. And I've worked with a number of these people, and it's clear to me that surgery is not the solution. But if, and some they do have the surgery and they are happy, and that's fine. You know, that's if they want to be. But I think we're encouraging people to question things historically they'd never questioned. And at least we ought to be more sensitive to where they're coming from.